constantly. Love me constantly. You do for me spiritually. This kind of love no be digital. It no be digital. Yeah.
How are you?
I'm very good, David. How about yourself?
I'm good, I'm good. Yeah, I appreciate you doing this interview with me. I'm actually very grateful for that. Yeah, how's your day been?
Yes, I'd say overall, my day's been really good, thank you. I mean, the fact that it's spring period in the UK and the weather's picking up, and obviously with our studies, it's been very good and somewhat intense. However, I'm looking forward to this podcast with you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, anyway, yeah, let's just get down to it anyway. So obviously you are aware of, how social media can have an impact on certain people, even like be that students like yourself and I as well. So I was like, to what extent do you think social media is influencing university students today? How would you say has it influence on us?
Well, I'd say it has a really, really big emphasis on influencing students by actual consumption of social media. Obviously, if you look at the likes of Andrew Tate, and of course, different types of influences around studies, and of course, potentially around life in general, it's
Mm,
having a really, really good and positive impact on certain students, especially on the academic point of view. However, there's so many cons, especially towards the elements of mental health, even depression, setbacks. I do think nowadays with the Gen Z generation, there needs to be an element of education, and that
yeah,
needs to be improved immediately.
yeah. Would you say like social media has like, would you say it's more like a bad influence on people or like on students, or like more of good influence? Because it can kind of be like, pros and cons to this as well. You've heard of that as well.
Yeah, you know what? If you were to differentiate between both pros, cons, or even the good and bad, I'd say from an informative point of view, that's a really, really good element across social media. Of course, you're actually projecting yourself on a positive level, but
Yeah,
also when it comes to the negative elements, essentially, you're actually consuming a lot of negative content that can actually have huge impact on your ramifications, such as your mental health,
mm,
your
mm,
lifestyle, your political beliefs, and of course, a certain hobby you follow, for instance, that could be football, possibly boxing, working out, going to the gym, even watching movies. It's a big plethora of different types of elements across social media, but I'd say in terms of negatives, I definitely agree with that without a doubt. And with positives, there's not a lot of positives compared to negatives, and that needs to be improved immediately. That's really lack of awareness.
yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, I think overall, yeah, I'll say like it can have a. I mean, yeah, I'll say like there are some certain like good extent from social media, how it has a good influence on people. I say more of like to students, or like even like obviously some like student athletes. I'll say, they kind of post like videos of them doing certain things, and then they get like compliments and everything, which is cool and everything. Yeah, but overall, I think like social media can really distract the person, can really you can really like waste a lot of time, especially as a person is constant on Instagram and everything. Have you like had that experience before where like you have spent like too much time on social media and everything? Like it's a point where you yourself can actually feel like you wasted time, and that's like it's having a bad influence on your studies or certain things.
You know, during the past, I'd say I used to procrastinate a lot on social media, but right now, in
Yeah,
terms of limiting my time management, it's really
yeah,
important that you do actually control your own screen management across different social media platforms, and that can actually have a huge impact on not only yourself but also your family in terms of socialization. Also, the fact that you're actually focused on your studies and also how you approach them can actually have a huge impact on levels of requirements that you're achieving in terms of results.
mm,
Essentially, if you look at it from a coping mechanism point of view, just sort of turn your actual phone off, escape from social media.
yeah,
It's real life compared to social media in terms of where we are right now in terms of digital space. And it's evolving continuously.
yeah. So like, how would you characterize this type of social media influence?
Well, I'd say I'd characterize it by saying the fact that, of course, anyone can be influenced by social media. Depends on whether it is right behind us or whether it is right around us, essentially. Social media is everywhere in the world right now. If you look at it from different types of platforms such as TikTok, X, possibly Instagram, Facebook, you can name it. Even if you look at it from an academic point of view, or even maybe from a networking point of view, just do you want to develop your own studies? LinkedIn is really, really crucial for networking, and that's really good for your actual escapism, as well as actually focusing on your actual portfolio and how you
Yeah,
actually track yourself towards different types of employers. But If you look at it from maybe a digitalization point of view, the likes of, say, Snapchat, Netflix, YouTube, for instance, they're really good
Mm.
forms of media content. And of course,
Yeah,
the likes of BBC iPlayer, those type of crimes materials are actually really appealing and they completely different one than another, actually.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, and do you know the thing as well? Is like there's actually like some countries even who like have like a strict regulation towards social media. Countries like Australia and Spain as well. And I want to like ask, like, what are your thoughts around this? Would you say like the regulations are a bit too strict? Like, obviously, yes, you've seen how social media can have an influence on students, a bad influence on students, to the point where they fail the exams or they utilize the time on Instagram, scrolling, Snapchat, and everything. But would you say that this is the right thing to do from Spain and Australia, or would you say that it's too strict? Like, what are your thoughts around this?
No, it's absolutely the right thing to do in terms of implementing the right regulation space. If you look at it from our
Ah,
perspective in the UK too, if you look at across the social media element as well, especially with teenagers nowadays, rather than studying or even developing academically or even at school in their own respective curriculums, they just
mm,
procrastinate social media, and that's clearly harming their own developments. And of course, if you look at the likes of crimes in the UK, could you argue that potentially social media is actually having a huge impact? Absolutely. Can lead to lot of knife crimes, drugs potentially in terms of drug
it's true,
deals,
it's true, yeah, it's true.
and yeah, and also theft as well.
Yeah,
Bear in mind, being influenced by elements of theft. That's just actually defaming your own character and destroying who you're meant to be. Ideally, so the best solution going forward in the UK, if I were maybe a member of parliament, I'd argue that we should actually implement much stronger regulations, and that would lead to more effective change. If you compared it to, let's say, 20 or so years ago, social media was really, really huge and also globalized in the UK. But
mm,
now it's completely revolutionized and there needs to be a different shift immediately.
yeah, yeah. Obviously, like you see, like how it can also influence. Obviously, this is like there can be kind of a difference, but I've seen social media actually like ruin athletes, and also it can have a good impact on athletes, but it can also like ruin athletes, their mentality and everything. And what more as in like students who are scrolling, they're seeing all these things, it could also influence them as well. Even the people they utilize or they idolize as well, to the point where now it's also having a bad impact on them. So yeah, there are some things you said I actually agree with. I agree with you to a certain extent as well. So would you say that is this something that should be applied within the UK regarding university students? Would you say that this is the kind of level we should get to?
Oh, absolutely. I'd say if we apply it to a certain level, that certain students can be limited to their use of social media. Will
Mm,
that actually have a negative impact on their own social skills? I don't think so, but it will help them actually realize the negatives of social media and, of course, the problems around social media. And of course, the cons of social media. Bear in mind, if you look at it from a pros cons point of view, there are so many positives and negatives regarding social media. I'd say
mm,
restricting students from the use of social media and the fact that they are not only focusing on an academic level but professional level, those
mm,
two elements should be main focus. And of course, you should get a balance of doing your own personal preferences, your own time, such as maybe consuming TikTok content, YouTube content.
mm,
Nothing
mm.
really off whatsoever. I'd say in terms of social media, toxicity needs to be limited for many students should they do want to succeed.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So overall, I don't do agree with what you're saying. I think in certain ways also social media is very can actually be quite useful as well, especially maybe you're like doing a research or you might need something, which is cool. But I think it's also a problem where how you utilize your time on Instagram, Snapchat, and how it can even ruin or you even like run into your time of you doing your work or doing something productive even. But yeah, I think I actually agree. I actually agree with you on most of the things you said as well. So overall, to conclude this whole like meeting and everything, you would say that social media is just like it's a bad influence, more of a bad influence than good influence. You say?
Well, I'd say predominantly a bad influence considering the actual era we're in now. I'd say in 2026, you could argue social media. First compared to the past 20 or so years, essentially, when it was actually established. I'd say from a positive point of view, it's good for engaged content. It's really, really, really informative. It's really good
Yeah.
for education purposes. And of course,
Mm,
storytelling, showcasing different elements of media that you're really interested in. And of course, in a sense, limiting the use of the skilling. helps you to actually to improve your own skills, improve your knowledge around certain things, such as there's maybe theories, maybe production elements, perhaps maybe movies you like, sports you love, and of course, some personal preferences on actual maybe acting level. That's why I think of social media, I think it's a positive too.
Yeah, I agree. But well, I think that's it for us now. I want to say thank you, Hardy, for allowing me to have this interview with you. I appreciate you helping me out with this. Yeah, I'll see you when I can.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it.